All right. We are here today to do another one of my research streams, although today's a little different. I'm going to not be doing any research style work. Most of the development work I'm doing on Bin Dash, I'm going to be doing off stream just because that works better for me. But I thought at least once, and we'll see how it goes, but at least once it'd be cool to show what the difference in the development style is versus the research style. So I'm going to do that today. I'm going to do some development work on Bin Dash, and you'll get to see where I'm at and how I make progress on an application like Bin Dash. As always, this project and everything else that I do at the lab is funded entirely by people like you who go and check out mrforth.com/membership and decide that they can become a supporter or a member. So if you were to take a look at that and make that same decision, it'd be much appreciated. All right, with that, let's take a look at this project here. I've got Bin Dash, still looks the same as it did at the end of the jam. Nothing has changed about the program yet. We got scrolling working on these panels, and we've got the table and the hex view. And the coloring on the hex view, and that's about it. Like that's the whole thing. There's also the tree thing here, which is currently not used for anything useful, but it's an affordance in the UI system already. And I've been making steps to make this a much more powerful application sort of core system. So, like, for instance, all of the view types that we were just looking at, the hex view has its own file now. It's defined to meet it's defined by filling in a definition for this tick function, and then I construct a view by giving it a tick function and a panel. And so then I have this panel layout system that I didn't used to have that just automatically lets me sort of lay things out so you can see. Where is this panel header? Here we go. So you can see, like, you know, I don't have to manually compute all my rectangles anymore. Instead I tell it where the panels go. And that panel system does give me one new thing that I did skip over that you might not have seen, which is that resizing here is working. But that's like the one new feature that's been added. The rest of it's been refactoring what was there to make more of it. So the current state of things is I've got everything connected in the root of the program, all the globals, essentially everything that is tied to the sort of central core features of the program are not, all of those things are not going through this BD context struct, which there's just a single global copy of that gets set up at the beginning. And I have not done everything that I need to do to make sure that, like, naming is clear on all of these things. So a bunch of stuff used to take in explicit contexts in the last couple days that have now all gone to being on this one single global context. There's also plenty of spots in the code, I search here, where I'm directly accessing stuff in BD context, which might not be what I actually want to be doing. So I'm going to be developing an API for that. And ultimately, I want to be doing all of this with a mind to thinking about if it's possible to build plugins for new views. Now, I don't know if that's going to be possible or reasonable to expect, but that is kind of where I would like things to be going. I know I want, if I look here, I have this PE parser plugin, and I know I want this to act as a plugin, but this is actually sort of already factored that way. I mean, there's work to do on refactoring this, rewriting it to make more sense. But the point is that this already doesn't directly rely on BD context or anything else external to it. It doesn't need an API that it doesn't have. It's just ready to go. The API it does rely on is the binviz stuff, and that's already been sort of nicely defined and cleaned up. So it's the core application stuff, and if we don't get a plugin for the views, if we don't end up having a way for a plugin to provide a new type of view, that'll be okay. We'll still be able to do a lot of useful stuff with just built-in view types. But if plugins could provide new views, that would open up a whole new set of possibilities that won't be possible if that's the scope of what can be done here really hinges on whether that's possible. So I'd like to be making progress on that. The other thing, though, is that right now I'm about halfway through, and this was paused for the consolidation of the contexts recently, which is why that's on my mind. But I'm about halfway through building a new way of specifying these views through this box system. And I can do some things on the box system right now. So these yellow lines for the separators are on the box system, and this header view is on the box system. But if I open this thing on the left, this panel, and the table view, none of these are on the box system yet. These all still use the old original just render directly to the screen logic. And so if I am going to get everything running on the box system, which would be nice because it would solve problems like right here. You see how I can try to, it thinks I'm going to grab the click and drag thing, but it actually clicks there instead. And so there's like an ambiguity about which thing I'm hitting. And that's because I don't have a unified box system that determines when the mouse, where the mouse hit actually lands in terms of interactive items, right? So this defines the box where it thinks it can be interacted with. This defines a box where it thinks it can be interacted with, and they kind of overlap, and so they both think that they are taking the mouse. It turns out when I finally click, it's this one and not this one that took the mouse, and so it shouldn't have been changing my cursor in that case, but it doesn't know because I don't have a box system. And what actually should happen, what I want it to do, is to not highlight this thing. When I'm this close, that's how close I want it to be. That's the correct distance for grabbing the panel. I should have to get my mouse to here to be able to click it, but it doesn't actually require that because, again, the system setting up these boxes doesn't know. So I just need to be moving all of my systems towards a unified data structure for sorting out mouse interactions, which I don't have right now. And I have the system sort of in its rudimentary phase right over here. And so I think today what I'll be doing is, oops, my headphones just got knocked out. I think I'm going to just be kicking back and attempting to move more of my view implementations over to the box system. Okay. Hey, Tool, welcome. Now, I used to be able to center that text. I also used to have the clipping working, and those have been lost by the switch to the box system. Ah, that's nice of you to say, Tool. What do you you mean just because of like the like colors and boxes and text? I gotta fix that clipping thing. That's gonna be the worst. All right. I gotcha. All right. So that doesn't do anything yet because I haven't programmed it to do anything. Let's go make that do something. All right, so that centered the text on these cells again, which is cool. But there's still the little issue of rendering off the edge that we need to deal with. I think for that, what I could do is to set up a parentage system. Instead of saying R clip right here, what we'll do is we'll say clip box. whenever we begin a group, it has to be a child of the existing current group. That's one of the rules. And then we can set that. And that. And then when I go to render, I've been just iterating the list of all boxes. But what if I did it as a depth first tree traversal instead? The advantage to that, if I don't do it that way, then the way I'll figure out how to apply clips, right? One way or another, I have to apply the clipping information from parent to child. If I'm iterating the tree depth first, then I can track what the clipping rectangle is and pass that down and through and modify as necessary as nodes come up that modify it, and then apply it as appropriate at each box. If I do it as a list search, then I have to scan at each node. I have to scan up through the parent tree to find all of the clips and intersect them all. Or I have to track the state of clips down through the tree as it's constructed. I think we just switch to a depth first tree traversal. Seems much simpler than anything else. Okay, one thing at a time here. No, I am not hacking. I wouldn't call any of this hacking. I'm working on a project called BinDash. I can show you in a minute if that's what you're curious in knowing more about. Don't worry, code is more complicated than it needs to be. If I have anything to do about it, I'll fix it someday. Okay, so when we create new boxes now, we need to be sure to put them in the current group's parent. So that would be parent equals BD context box group. Assert that that's not 0. Sibling 0. Box parent equals parent. So we stick the box into the list of the BD context, and then we stick it into the list of children of the current group, and that should be better. But of course, the first one we make is the root itself, which doesn't have a parent, so we can't do this. I code for money. I also code for fun. I'm lucky enough to be able to do both, although not always simultaneously. Alright. Right now, I definitely feel like I'm doing both simultaneously. This is project for my new venture, the Mr. Fourth Lab, which I've been working on since, well, about the beginning of this year I started working on this. Maybe a little last year I was working on it too. But lately we've been working on this bin dash project, and which looks like this. And I gotta fix this bug with the stuff going off the screen. That's what I'm in the middle of. And so hopefully that'll make some money. The bin dash project, but I'm also really excited about it. It's letting me explore some new ideas, or rather refine some old ideas. It's more like it. Yeah, we're working on binary visualization, which it involves looking at a lot of numbers, but I'm gonna try to improve the visual. The visual communication could be a lot better than what a lot of these tools do. So that's what I'm shooting for. We need to figure out now how we're gonna do this as a recursive walk down the tree here. Oops. Okay, so we rendered the box that came in. Same way we've rendered every other box. And then we render the children. So now we're doing a Okay, so that should still just visit all the boxes, which won't change anything if I did it right. Oh, change something. What's busted? How did we get bogus? How did we get bogus? Huh. That's how. Nope, that's not how. Okay. Let's just start from here and see what you're doing. Box root. Okay. Okay, so you go in there. You set the clip. We've got nothing to render because we didn't set you up with any of those features. You go into here, and so just so we can see, here's the box we were looking at. Here's the child we're going to step in there. Now that's our current box. We rendered this, and now the child we're going to is this one. And this is, yeah, this is at this level. Man. It looks like it's hitting a Stack Overflow, but I can't quite track down where it gets stuck. Okay. How can something's own first child be itself? That part doesn't make any sense. It's also its own parent. It doesn't make any sense. That's not the way it looked earlier. Okay, here we have the box root is not its own parent. Its first child isn't itself. the box we're looking at, the child we're looking at. Right there. How did that happen just now? Someone changed these. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. Address of BD context box root first child. Okay, we hit here. How do I make a data breakpoint? Do you mean processor breakpoint? Yeah, you called it a processor breakpoint. Okay. You should have said something. Okay, what is going on here? What is this? Okay, come on. Debugger, work with me. Work with me. We don't need to be mad at each other. I won't get mad at you. You don't get mad at me. We're trying to figure out when this is going to change. It's going to change. It's going to point to this for some reason. Okay. There. We found it. Wait a minute. Is it frame 2? Is that the problem? There is the problem. Okay. Okay. We still don't have clipping, but we're getting there. We can now do the recursive walk. So that's great. Now the only problem is, whenever I go to do one of these ticks, I want to know that the rectangle from the current box is going to be passed down if it's marked as clipping its children. So basically, I guess the easy way to do this is to have a rectangle pass through. Although I suspect that I won't just want a rectangle pass through. That'll probably become more complex over time. That'll be one instance of a number of things that'll work like this, and so I'll probably want to have a different way of handling that. But we can do this for now. So let's do it this way. Okay, if we intersect two things, then the larger of the mins is relevant. Maria, hey, I'm doing good. How are you? And these should be mins. Okay. And then I feel like Mindash is going really well. It's completely converted from this point to like a screw around jam project to me going through all the refactoring. I think, it's probably going to be a month or two of just going through this core stuff over and over and over and over again. But when it's done, we'll have a brand new core, kind of like the 4Coder core with a plugin interface. We'll be able to start iterating on those APIs and designing a pretty cool suite of binary visualization tools with plugins for the community to extend to whatever formats that they like. Feels very doable after the last week of sort of getting up and running with it. Hey, there it is. There's clipping is back. So that's good to have. And if I were to hang out here, that's all good. All right. All right. Looking good. Let's commit that. So that was the hex view. Okay. So that was the hex view. Let's try the tree view. Can we move it over to the box system? This one makes me a little nervous because it uses a recursive display function. So luckily the box context is already getting passed through, which that doesn't even need to happen. We can start by just eliminating that. Now we're looking for anywhere where it's directly rendering to the... Yeah, so here are some direct rendering. How exactly is clipping being accomplished, though? I don't see it here. I suspect there is no clipping. I suspect that the reason it works is because it's getting rendered over. And I can prove it. Ready for this? That doesn't work. Maybe I don't know why it's happening that way. Why is the tree clipping? I mean, it's supposed to. That's my goal, but the code that's written shouldn't actually be able to clip. I couldn't really tell you. Unless the generic view tick is, yeah, it's doing a clip. I'm just doing this to make sure I don't have old code laying around doing clipping when it shouldn't. There we go. That's what we expect to see. Now, let's make that stop. Okay. This is going to be a little tricky. Here's the box we're trying to create. Okay. Now, one way or another, that box wants a back color of A05. So that takes care of this part and this part. Although that's only if it's hovered or selected. And if it's hovered, then we want to give it an outline color of A13 and an outline thickness of 2. So there's our box. Now, there's a lot of manual layout stuff happening here, and I think this is the kind of thing that I just don't feel up for doing on stream. This is a lot of just sort of iterative system design that would need to happen, which would eventually allow me to not have to calculate any of this here. I would merely write sort of structure declaring code. Let me turn my music off so I can think for a second and talk. That structure declaring code would say stuff like, okay, we have a box, we know what rectangle it belongs in, but we want to put down an icon and a string. Sometimes the icon's there, sometimes it's not. But we want all the strings to be aligned, so we want some kind of fixed width for those icons that is based on how big they're expected to be, given the font size and stuff. Yeah, the layout on that is interesting. I guess we do kind of want more explicit control here for the way that I want it to lay out. It's not good enough to just have it flexibly show up, because if it was, then yes, this would be automatic. We wouldn't write any of this code, but this code is actually ensuring that all of the icons and text have the same sort of X alignment, so they create columns. And if I were to be doing this sort of auto layout style, it would have to then be informed not only that the icon does or doesn't exist at each point and what the text is, but also that there's a sort of constraint to align all of these together now and into the future, so that it has to count all the potentialities of what can show up here without even having the data for it, which is impossible. So it could never actually automatically do what I can do if I do it manually here. So I don't know. I don't know what that means exactly, except that icons as these little, you know, lead-ins, the little icons on the left side of the text, kind of force it to do some of the manual layout here. So maybe I take that back. Maybe this isn't something that I need to build an auto layout system for at all, actually. Lame. Can't tell you how lame this is. It's so lame. Something like this, although I'm pretty sure this is going to be wrong for reasons I'm a little confused by the icon rendering alignment. It's a bit off, so that might become an issue here. Okay. I don't expect that to work, so I'm going to save it. I'm going to pause right here for a moment to take my 5-minute break. Let's get a little sign up here for the break. All right. All right. So it is actually managing to get the font icon on there, but you can see that it doesn't place it in the right spot. And that's going to be tricky to fix. Let me see if I can figure out what's happening there. There we go. It's a little confusing why this was working at plus 16. Yeah, that's what's confusing. I thought that the so most of my text rendering system, the way it's set up is that the default alignment is top left. So if I say place something at 0, 0, and then render a string there, you'll see it because 0, 0 is the top left of my screen, and it's all set up so that if I say render at 0, 0, the top left of the text will align with the top left of the screen. Right? And if I move the point around, the top left of the text continues to align with whatever point that I've given. And then I have a parameter or a setting for the text alignment. So if I want to center my text instead of put it in the top, and instead of doing what I just described, I can say, well, make the alignment 0.5, 0.5 instead of 0, 0. So now it's going to say whatever point I give it for rendering the text should be the center of the string or the center of the icon instead of the top left corner of the string or icon, and so on and so on. So that's how it's supposed to work, but for some reason when I was handwriting the draw icon function call right here, I had to specify the bottom of the icon. But I want, maybe, let me just dig in here. Maybe the way I draw icons had another rchar. Does this take into account the alignment the same way that this does? This says we take the x dimension, we take the y dimension. And then we figure out the real x0, y0. So if these are both 0, then the p you put in just goes into the low level at 0, 0, the low level p. But if these are if these are both 1s, then you subtract both of those dimensions. And so this ends up becoming the bottom right corner instead of the top left corner, right? P.x, P.y is the bottom right corner, and these become the new top left corner that you pass to the lower level here, yeah, the rchar isn't doing any text alignment. That's the difference. So the reason okay. And now I'll just leave that function there, but it's kind of busted. I probably don't want it anymore because the box system is just doing it by doing a drawString call now, which means it works the way you would expect. Like, alignment is just correct now. Okay. But I'm good. Thanks for asking. How you doing? Okay. I don't know why clipping is working now. Probably because this is showing the clipping amount right there. Let's just see what happens if I push this. There we go. Perfect. So these over here are all going to clip because they are setting their own boxes to be limited to the size of the panel. But the icon box doesn't do that, and so we can see the clipping isn't happening right there. You see that? So we need to still set up the clipping. The icons are from a font. I have a special font with a bunch of icon codes. I actually need to make a better icon font because I'm still missing stuff I want. And then over here I've got my icon font sitting. Yep, that's how I do it. The Fontello system makes it pretty easy. Although they don't export the C header for me, I still got to do that part. I actually have a YouTube video about this too. If we were to go if I sign in here, then we can go to the video library and under graphics 2, I believe. Well, let's just search. We're looking for the icon system. Yeah, so this one right here. Which episode is this? Graphics 2, episode 14. You can see we have like the stuff from Fontello comes in here, but I have to like just mute this. What's the... Did it skip that part? Here we go. So they give you the CSS file with all the codes, and I had to like manually do this part, unfortunately. Just took a minute. But yeah. It's a great way to do it. It's a great way to package up your icons. Okay, with that, I should now have clipping on those perfect. All right, so almost everything has been moved over, but the little line, the little vertical line there, that's not on the box system yet. Let's see if we can do that. And there we go. Still curious why base relocations point so far down. That can't be right. Okay. So there's now nothing here that goes through the main rendering system. It's all going through Box. Right? Excellent. Okay, so that's the tree view and the hex view. Let's work on the table view, and then we've got everything on the box system. Okay. This is a big one. This one's probably the biggest one. Lots of rendering is happening. Let's start with this. No more getting the font. Oh, you know what? I didn't move the tree totally to the box system. It's still doing its own interaction state. I have to fix that too. Oh man. Yeah. Much to do. In case it's not clear, the reason to get everything off of rendering itself and onto the box state stuff is because that'll let me do a lot more unified handling of all of the boxes on the screen at once. I'll be able to do things like resolving down to exactly one mouse hit at a time. I'll be able to do things like tracking the state of what's being hovered in terms of the box system, so that when I have, 20 different heterogeneous views, some of which come from different plugins, they'll all speak the same language about specifying which pieces of the screen correspond to significant interactable concepts in a language where I can still have the core figure out who's actually getting clicked and dragged and double clicked and right clicked and hovered and all of that, but where each view will be able to declare what's happening inside of itself, um, as if it doesn't need to know anything. It will not be sort of preemptive cooperation. It will be, or it'll be more of a preemptive cooperation rather than a uh, uh, I don't know what I'd call it. What's the opposite of preemptive multi-threading? Sort of cooperative? The model of how you get things to work together. I guess you shouldn't call that all cooperation. There's something nice about writing things in such a way that the views can implement themselves as if they exist in isolation, but the rules of how you implement views constrain them so that the core can ensure they interact nicely. And that's what the box system provides. Maria asks a good question. Are boxes entries in a UI tree? That's a little bit too strong of a statement to say right now. They are technically in a tree of boxes, although the hierarchy of the tree is not as strict as you might think. And it is kind of a UI system. It is basically, I'm in immediate mode constructing this set of boxes, which then in a single pass, all the boxes get rendered and the text on them gets rendered and all of that. And then box interactions like clicking and drag and dropping are handled through that box system as well. And the information about what is being interacted with is fed back to the immediate mode code on the next frame. So with that, you get it is kind of a UI system. It's not that different from the way maybe Ryan presents UI systems on his series on building a UI. I don't have like all the magic auto layout stuff. You can see I'm still manually computing my rectangles. It might end up to the point where I want to be able to have the layout be totally computed by the layout system automatically, but I haven't gotten far enough to want that yet. And so it's not exactly a UI tree, it's more just a data structure that contains rectangles, and the hierarchy is just used to apply clipping right now. That's literally all the hierarchy is for. I can create a clip rectangle and all the boxes I put underneath that box are clipped to it. But yeah, it's a key part of implementing my UI, my unified UI system. And by having all of my views go through this instead of low-level rendering calls, I'll just be able to do more to put the separate views together into a single unified UI. Not that I have done any of that yet. We still have these nasty problems, like where I can hover the split. I can hover the divider and the node in the tree at the same time. Oh, hey, the outlines aren't showing up. That's not right. Okay. I should go back and fix that too. Tree is not actually done. I need to go back and fix it. Let's just hold off here. I'm going to go fix the tree. So what's the deal? Why did outline not work? Um, color is different. Let me double check. Yeah, I do use the outline color. Rect 0 color outline. Oh. That'll probably do it. There we go. Nice. Okay. Okay. Okay, Maria asked a really interesting question. Are helpers like graphics input key down, removing all matching instances, or just the first? Graphics input. Where don't I have this somewhere? There should be a key down. How does I guess the table doesn't have anything clickable. Surely this has something. Here we go. Input button press. Yeah, okay. So what this helper right here is doing is checking if the input contains an event where the button is down. Now, where the left button is down in particular. Now, there's a bunch of ways you can go about structuring an API like this. What data structure you choose to represent input is my favorite way to look at this is to think about what's the data structure we're going to use to represent input. And there's a couple of main paradigms, right? So one is The input is a bunch of switches that can be on and off, right? So my mouse can be up or down. Mouse buttons can be up or down. My keys can be up or down. And I want to know at any given time the state of all of those, which ones are up and which ones are down. And I want to also be able to compare the current state to the state from the previous frame, right? So a model like that is not event driven; it's just state driven. And when you want to be able to detect state transitions, and that's often how I would do something in, say, like a video game setup. Because in video games, you're often doing things like, okay, hold this button down to walk left, and this button to walk right, and the jump button, the longer you hold it, the the higher you jump and stuff like that, right? Um, and so having it as a frame by frame state makes a lot of sense in those cases. For applications, the other model comes out a lot, which is that you have a stream of events, right? You have every time there's one of those state transitions, it gets encoded as an event, and so each frame you're getting a list of events and you're handling them. Now, there's two ways you can think about that. There's the four-coder way, which is that each event gets processed. So basically, you have your sequence of incoming inputs, and each one is an event, and so you take an event off the list and you process that event. And so you're processing one event at a time through the system. And so rendering is just what happens when you've run out of events to process, right? You're taking in this queue of events, and ideally, if you did it perfectly with no frame, what's the word I'm looking for? No tie to the frame rate or no tie to the rendering loop at all. Input would just be a logical data structure that always applies the same way every time it gets used. So if you take off an event and apply it, you would get the same result, whether or not it was this frame or next frame that got applied. But once you start adding in things like smooth scrolling, like this, where there's some animation, that gets a little tricky. And when you have big, large, complicated systems, four-coder actually does what I just described. It takes one event in, and then looks at the current state of the system and uses the current event plus the current state of the system to dispatch the event to some handler. And there might be no handler, but if there is a handler, that handler consumes that, it gets the information about that event, does some work to update the state, and then the loop continues, grab the next event, keep going, right? So you're kind of at the top level, at the root level, you have this, give me the next event, update the state with that event until the list is empty, and then render. The cool thing about that is that you get replayability of your events is more repeatable if I put the divide on when the frame occurs, right? If I have 5 key presses and they're spread over 2 frames, there are a bunch of ways to still put the frame split, right? Five input events plus a frame split can go in all sorts of different positions between those 5 events. So where the frame split happens, if that's relevant, that makes playback harder. Does that make sense? Like, if it matters whether the frame happened after 2 events or 3 events, then playing back those events again doesn't necessarily give you the same results, right? If you want to guarantee you're getting the same results, then you want the render step to have no side effects. The animations then are kind of a problem, right? Mouse position is kind of a problem that you can't, like, the interaction, mouse position itself can be captured as part of each event if you want it to be repeatable, but that doesn't work if you also have animations, right? Animations plus mouse position kind of give 2 different things which are semantically changing mouse position. So if you want to have perfect replayability at that point, you need frame tick to be one of your event types that happens, right? You basically say, consume all of the events that I got from input, do a frame tick, and then render, right? And then where the frame ticks happen encodes the solution. Now, that's one way to do it. The other thing you can do, which is what I'm doing here, is less rigid. That is, I don't have a core loop that says grab the next event and dispatch to update the state. Instead, the structure is I have a data structure that represents the list of all events that are available right now for this frame. and I run all the code for the frame everywhere and pass that through everywhere, right? So I'm not saying give me the next event, handle it, give me the next event, handle it. I'm saying run this system and let it consume any events that it wants. Run this system and let it consume any events that it wants. Instead of having a top loop that says give me one event and dispatch, give me one event and dispatch, I'm saying take this system and handle it, take this system and handle it, take this system and handle it. However, I hard code those systems to go, right? Um, and as those systems go, they each have the opportunity to take things off of the keyboard and off of the mouse, right? And when they do, they consume them so that later systems won't also get to consume them. This is a pretty common paradigm for doing things. It's still a list of events, but we're consuming events out of order. The problem here is running into cases like what you're talking about, where one event gets consumed multiple times. So usually when we say consume, we literally mean we take it and we erase it out of the data structure so that other things which are interested in clicks won't consume them. But just because there's no way to write an API that always does the right thing in that case. You really need a system way of thinking, right? If I give you an API like this one, and I decide, hey, it does erase all of the events, or no, it doesn't erase all of the copies of the same event, either way it's wrong. And what I mean by that is, either way I do it, it will do stuff you weren't expecting. If you really want a coherent input consuming strategy, you want to get back to some kind of centralization. That very simple version I give you, where you take one event off the queue and dispatch it, gives you a lot simpler problem when it comes to saying how do I know who consumes each event. That is centralized and easy to answer. But structuring things that way becomes difficult. As I learned working on ForCoder, getting the event to the right place while still having the flexibility to specify all kinds of different subtle modes that can happen, right? Like, this isn't E or Vim, so it's not modal, but if I hit Control F or Control R, I'm beginning a search mode where typing the word mouse, right? Normally if I type mouse, that's what happens. It inserts mouse. But if I go Control F mouse, now typing the word mouse does something different. Getting the events to flow to the right place while still consuming them one at a time the way ForCoder does requires quite a lot of difficult structuring. There is something nice about being able to flexibly iterate by just saying, hey, whenever I want to grab an input, but eventually a system like this is going to collapse back down to something more centralized. It might not be centralized by saying give me one event at a time in dispatch, but it might instead be centralized by saying, okay, at the beginning of a frame, I'm going to compute my box system, and then I'm going to tick the box system, and at that time, the set of all current inputs and the set of all current boxes will be processed in a way that's not necessarily one at a time for either one, but that is something, right? Is two sets go into that function, and whatever needs to happen happens to figure out what to do, and out pops a result of some changes of the state and what to render. That can all kind of go together. So that centralizes it in a different way, but as long as you're not doing a centralized system that you plan, there's no correct API. That's my take. Every API has its quirks, it will surprise you, and until you build some kind of centralized system for considering how your inputs are processed, your inputs will feel buggy and easy to make mistakes. You want a kind of narrow choke point of the language for interaction if you want it to be highly predictable. So to answer your question literally, I think I consumed the first event, but I don't think there's a correct answer. Interesting, does it? I didn't even mean for that to be the case, but who knows? You're right, it doesn't break. I think I meant for this to break. Yeah, see, this one breaks. Yeah, some of these just don't break. That's just a mistake. It really doesn't matter. There shouldn't be multiple events anyway. Um, yeah. Input event processing is always going to be. It's not the kind of thing where you can build an API. API design cannot solve the problem. There are different layers of problem, and assigning a problem to the right level of analysis is important. So, clean, predictable input processing is not something that you can solve at an API level. It's something you have to solve at an architecture level. You have to have an architectural plan. Once you have an architectural plan, you can design API. API design is like picking a language of sort of exchange. It's about the syntax and the the choice of which kinds of errors are up to the user to prevent, and which kinds of errors are caught by the system and reported, and which kinds of errors aren't even errors. Things like that are API design. But something like, how does my whole program express its desires to consume inputs and match them with behaviors, is beyond an API problem. That's an architecture problem. APIs are more detailed and specific, and architecture plans are more um, more about the rules of a system, right? They're about what's allowed to be spread out and what's supposed to be centralized, and how things get expressed in terms of what information flows through each computation and so on. Okay, you see how when I'm dragging this to the left, it thinks I'm highlighting that box? That's one of the things we want to fix soon. We're getting there. Okay, so the table, okay, the column thing is working. That's good. Okay. Set up the clip. So many of these. Alright, that looks good. Although these lines are going too far off the edge now. That's not supposed to happen. Must have got one of the horizontal lines wrong. Okay. Probably this one is supposed to be grid max X. Weird, these should all be right aligned, not left aligned. Might have to go fix that real quick. Okay, it says it's right aligned, so what's the problem? Unless my table view doesn't do that anymore. Okay, but I thought we did something about text align in here somewhere. It's just missing? Okay. I don't know how that happened. I literally thought we had this. Okay. Like, didn't we just type that? I'm confused. It was like an if else. I probably deleted the whole if else instead of keeping the one branch that I needed. Or something like that. There we go. There we go. All right. So So that's pretty good. The next big step is I said I moved the tree and table view over, but they still have a bunch of their interaction states being handled locally, and I want to get to the point where this is being handled through the box system itself, so that the box system will allow you to just say, like, here's a box. Oh, this box is clickable. Did it get clicked last frame? Oh, it did. And here's the behavior I want you to use in that case, right? Um, so, um, with that though, I think today this is a good spot to stop with today's stream. I've been at it for a couple hours. That's usually my stream time. It's a couple hours, and this was just a little taste of what development on this project is like. So the truth is, I just have tons and tons of stuff. I've got just an ongoing to-do list with lots and lots of. Let's see if I can. You see this? You see what I mean? It's just like massive amounts of cranking out little things. And that's going to keep me going for a while so that we can actually have a nice tool for visualizing these things. Probably by a week or two from now, I'll have enough baseline stuff that there can be new research projects. Like, we already took a look at other binary visualizations, like what are they called? The histogram style stuff and the Hilbert curve mapping and stuff like this to get better visual artifacts for looking at the data besides just the hex view that we have now. Plus, there's a bunch of ideas about how to mark up things like the hex view or those visual maps for things like pointers and data sections and stuff like that. So I want to get to the point where I can hop on stream and play around with those visualizations and learn what's good and what's not good in that space. But I also want to actually make this into a tool. So I'm going to keep building up this infrastructure for now to make this into a nice polished tool so you can do stuff like not accidentally click this when you're trying to resize this, and actually copy paste out of the tables and resize the table columns. Like, it's all this just little stuff to do. So we'll keep at it for now. This week I have changed to a Monday, Wednesday, Friday streaming schedule so that I can have the extra time for developing on this. And I'm not going to do any more development on this on stream. I'm going to switch, I'm not sure to what, on Monday, but this Friday I'm streaming 4Coder Friday as usual. So come back in 2 days, 10:30 a.m. Pacific time, to see some 4Coder critiquing. I'm not sure what we'll get into next, but there's still plenty of stuff about 4Coder to spend some time looking at. So I think that should be fun. And coming Monday, I don't know exactly what we're doing, but my suspicion is we'll probably get started on maybe parsing ELF files, since that's the next big step on the research side of the binary object stuff. Or maybe we'll switch off of binary and objects and we'll go back to the SAT solver or one of the other research projects going on here, while the development of this is still holding up work on new visualizations. So with all of that in mind, that's stuff you might be interested in checking out. As always, a reminder that features like this video library that we checked out today and other stuff are all available to members and supporters. Make sure to take a look at what features you might like and think about what you could afford. It's a huge help to me because I'm counting on anyone who can to become a member by going to mrforth.com/membership to keep these projects going. So it's much appreciated to everyone who's already made that decision, and if you are watching thinking this is cool stuff and you'd like to see more of it, you can help by supporting here. You can also help by becoming a subscriber on Twitch, or you can go over to, if you go to itch.io Mr. Forth, you'll find my stuff, and you can check out some of the tools I've got. We got 4Coder up here. We got some of my experiments like Splink and Bin Jams, and also like some game jams and stuff that I've done. And you can download these and check them out and send me a tip through one of those if that's how you'd prefer to support me. So with all of that in mind, thanks for coming and hanging out today and checking out what I'm doing, and I'll see y'all around the internet. Bye.